You might have this thought, and I'm sure it's common to most folks, that when your life is over and you leave this place, you hope people speak well of you. Well, James Williams got that in spades. All the wonderful things you're hearing his friends say about him, well, it's not just his friends. I've been bringing up James Williams to random people, cats that knew him, and they all pretty much echo the same things you're hearing his friends say about him. How much of a giving, caring, and positive person he was. So we pick it back up with comments from Yoron Israel, who launches us into a conversation about the humanity of James Williams and how that manifested on the bandstand.
One of the things too that I love the way, in terms of his presentation, man, I love the way that he always made us feel on the bandstand. From the standpoint of how he introduced us, just that in itself, it really, when you played with James, you really wanted to give everything you had, because, he esteemed you so much, and he let the audience know that. Wow. And so that kind of level of appreciation, I think, as accompanying musicians, it just made me, speaking for myself, and I'm sure that's true with everybody. I mean, you were in the band, so you could probably sense this yourself, but it really made you feel valued when you shared the bandstand with him. I mean, and it, and he didn't have to, he had played with so many great musicians and certainly ahead of my time. And just an amazing composer and piano player, but that really felt good, so that's something too, just kind of note to self, kind of thing. And the other thing, man, just kind of the simple things, he always made sure that you were paid before you hit, just a little simple thing, but that simple thing went a long way, at least in my mind and in my spirit, and in my just in how I approached the bandstand. Just that little thing. He could have paid us after. It wouldn't have been no big deal. It wouldn't have been wrong. But just the fact that he had stuff ready, before you hit. Made a huge difference, man. And I don't know, and he consistently did it. I mean, year after year after year that I was playing with him, it was never a situation where that didn't happen. So it's something to aspire to as a band leader.
Right. The few times that I worked with him, everything was just so organized and together and easy, It was a very pleasant experience. I would ask you for one word. For me, one word, if I had to choose one word to sum up James Williams, I would say soulful, because he had such a warm and inviting and generous vibe about him.
One word, James Williams was a spirit, man, a spirit. Spirit. Because first of all, that everybody, we got a brain, we got a body, and we have a spirit. Now, most people don't like to talk about this, and I'm not just talking about church people or whatever. I'm talking about spirit. I'm a true believer that everyone has a spirit, and every spirit is a little bit different. And, you got good spirits and bad spirits, and you got in-between spirits. But spirit is forever. The body turns to dust or whatever. The brain deteriorates as you get older. You can't remember your middle name. And so the brain, and it takes work to maintain the brain and the body. But the spirit, and the spirit requires maintenance too. You understand? But it's a little bit harder to talk about. But it is, the spirit is forever. In other words, body and brain, they're just temporary, but spirit So I'm just as close with James Williams now as I was 40 years ago when he was still walking around here.
Mm. Yeah, I have a question that might be a funny question, but
Sure.
one word to describe James for me would be soulful, because he's such a warm, giving guy.
Without a doubt.
What one word could you say to describe?
Describe James. I want to say sensitive, but that may not be the right word. Feeling. He felt pretty emotions. He felt friendship, because everybody has negative moments and everybody has periods when they just don't want to be bothered. And everybody has a period where they can be a jerk or an asshole, to put it mildly. But James never was like that. He was never like that. He was and if he felt things, which I imagine he must have, he was very private about them, you know, whatever the darker moments or the not so pleasant moments or the moments when you had self-doubt, you never saw it. I never saw it. So, you know, I mean, and he was so Southern. When he disagreed with somebody, I can't even put it in the words how he said it, but it sounded like a lot of people I know down south. I ain't got no time for that, you know, all stuff like that. But really in the Southern vernacular, because he would have this kind of King's English. I don't know if you call it King's English, but kind of straight English. But when he really got into something, you could hear Memphis losing out in a big way too.
Yeah, he was
well spoken. He was a soulful guy, well spoken. You know, and he probably wouldn't call it, but he knew how to bullshit people, but in the best of ways. You know, in the best of ways. It wasn't like he was trying to con you or pick your pocket. It was just to bring you into him. You know, to bring you into his music, to bring you into his aura or whatever it is that he wanted it to be. But he could really work the audience. James is sometimes some of James' monologues were as long as the sets. I was like the only person I met who could talk more, sometimes between tunes was Art Blakey. Art Blakey would sometimes have a monologue about 30 minutes. We'd be sitting there, man. People would be sitting on the stage and I'd about to go to sleep. Especially and of all places in Europe, where half the people in the audience didn't even know what he was saying. But he didn't stop. He still talked. But James could be like that. It was like, come on, James, let's get back to the music.
Wow, I just his style kind of seemed elegant to me. I didn't know him that long. Yeah. He seemed like an elegant, just like
Yeah, you could say that. That would be an apt description of James.
Yeah.
Elegance would be a part of it, and unlike myself and a lot of people I know, I never heard one profanity, one curse word ever from James Williams. And he may have been the only guy, he didn't use he used the N-word. I'm not sure about that one. Matter of fact, I'm almost certain he never did. But never any profanity. You know how people do, there's a driving kid around, they'll talk a little trash.
Especially on the road.
Not James. James's way of the most profane things that James said would be like, oh gosh. That was about it. Oh gosh. Wow. And not too many guys say oh gosh, but James did.
Wow. Okay. Yeah. What one word would you use to describe James?
Loving.
Loving. Yeah.
And that encompasses just, the human, his fellow, what he had towards people.
Yeah.
His fellow, he was, like you said, he definitely was soulful.
Yeah.
And a very giving person. And, as long as I've been around him since 1972, I never heard James curse.
Yeah. That's what Pierce said.
I never heard, I don't think I heard Mobley curse for that matter, though.
Spiritually intuitive.
Spiritual.
I would say, it's a simple word, but a powerful word, humble.
Humble.
Humble. Wow. And because I think his humility speaks all those, adjectives that you just mentioned, his soulfulness, his generosity. I think it's all sincere. In other words, nothing is pretentious because it comes from a place of humility.
Yeah, that's heavy.
Yeah.
Heavy.
So I would say that, yeah.
Do you remember the last time you saw James?
Yeah, the last time I saw James alive, I see him every day now, but back when he was still walking around on the planet, he had been very sick for a long time, and he had a will to live, man. He's trying to hang in there. So one day, Billy Pierce and I met James up at his apartment in Boston. And we just had talking about, James would pull out pictures and, oh, look at this. I want you to see this and so on. So, and I had to get to work. And every time I got ready, because I had to get in that New York traffic, I'm working with Bobby Short down at the Carlisle.
Oh, yeah. Okay.
And I had to get to work. And so every time I'd look at my watch and I'd get ready, oh man, I want you to look at this, because he knew that probably knew this, we wouldn't see each other too much more. So, man, I kept, staying a little bit longer than I knew I should, and ended up being late for work, man, with Bob Short at the Carlisle.
Do you remember the last time you saw James?
Sadly, he was in the hospital. He was in the hospital, and Bill Mobley, I flew up there because he told me he wasn't doing good, and man, it was hard for me to see him because I never smoked or drank myself, but James definitely did, and man, it was just hard. I just kind of kept kissing him on the forehead, telling him I love him, and then Bill and I decided to go get something to eat, and I think by the time we got back, he had died.
Yeah.
But like I said, I got a lot of footage of him with pictures of him here at the house with my kids and us playing piano together, and just thankful. I was always one taking pictures, and like I say, James, you may have seen the photo of a picture we took of James with Chick Corea. We had James band. The first two times Chick came to Memphis with his electric band, James group opened for them, so James got to know Chick really well, and Chick had dinner with us over James, and so I got to pick Chick's brain and stuff. But anyway, your mother was there, and my wife took a picture of me with them that got lost, but the picture of that with James, and I took those pictures, and like I said, I just man, it's his name probably came up every other day in my lessons because I think about advice he gave me, our song, because James, we never really talked about improvising a lot, but he would always show me songs because he knew I learned songs really fast. And
interesting.
But then he turned me on to just so many records and taking me to concerts, and you can't put a price on that.
Yeah.
Well, I saw him probably the night that he passed, or just before it. I don't know. I remember if he passed in the morning, but I went to the hospital bed. I think Donald Brown and I were there, some other people.
Yeah.
But I don't know. He was not doing so well that night. And, I don't know if he could see anything, but I went over there to his place in Brooklyn. That's the last time I remember really.
Yeah.
When he was cognizant and everything.
Okay.
they're sitting around, and Mulgrew was there, and Ray Drummond, some good friends of his, and Mulgrew and Ray. We're just sitting around chatting. But that was it was kind of a shock when he got sick. And maybe he was sick longer than anyone knew. I don't know.
Yeah.
Didn't tell anyone about it.
Didn't talk about it.
So, because it just seemed like it happened overnight, like in one summer. Like he taught that year at William Patterson up through the fall, summer break, and then boom, that's it. I mean, it's left a pretty big hole in my whole life,
Yeah.
Somebody like that. But he was a big part.
Well, yeah. Minutes before he passed, I was there in the hospital. Yeah, my brother and I was in the hospital. We was praying with him. We were at a point in time he couldn't speak, but we still was praying with him. We knew he was dying, and this would be it. So we all hugged and embraced him and said, we love you, and we'll see you on the other side soon, at some point. Yeah. So
beautiful.
He was at the hospital.
Nice send off.
Yeah.
I know he's a man of faith. Did he talk about that much openly with cats?
Yes and no, not really. Yeah, he didn't really talk about it. He was just a man of faith. I think he just, the way he would talk with it is through the music and not through words.
Yeah.
I do remember. We had, I'll start at the other end. When the year that he had passed, we actually had a tour booked in Europe, and the tour was like it was part of like the summer. You know how you go out in summer and you hit the North Sea and you hit this. It was a tour. It was a summertime tour booked for like July, June, something like that. And by that, I was living here in Boston. I was living here by that time. So that had to be the summer of 2004. We had this book. And I knew, knowing how much James loves to play, I'll never forget the phone call that I got from him. And it was like, I'm going to have to cancel this tour. And
which group was that? Was that ICU?
ICU. This was an ICU date. And when he told me that, because I know, how much he loved playing and, so forth, and all the years that I had been with him, he's not one to cancel a situation, cancel a gig or anything like that. When he said something was happening, it was happening. And when that phone call and the tone of his voice, that I was like, man, something's not right. It's not like him to cancel. And then, and then I remember before that I would often talk to him on the phone, just randomly, and I remember actually, I'll never forget where I was. I was actually traveling from home on my way to Berkeley and on the highway. And a lot of times our conversations would happen when I'm in the car, traveling. And man, he told me, and I don't know where it came from really, because our conversation wasn't about that. He said, man, take care of your wife, take care of your family. His conversation was along those lines, and it caught me it was like, man, we never really talked like that before. Talked about, and he had met Gail, and they really hit it off too. So I knew that he knew her, but specifically, for him to go there, it was like, man, thank you. thank you for the reminder, and so, I don't know what was going on in his head, but I just took it like, man, thank you. I appreciate you noticing. I appreciate you thinking enough to talk to me on a personal level like that. But so that was some of the last conversations that I remember. The last time that we actually had played, trying to think when that was actually. I do remember, and I don't know if this was the last time, but I do remember a gig that we had did around that time, 2003, 2004. He actually came to Boston, and we played a short-lived, beautiful room that they had here. And actually, James Believe was, just to show you his industry, how industrious he was. He kind of had a hand on helping the guy who was book it, but we had a gig there, and it was a trio. Again, Lockwood was on bass, and he had Andy McGee and Billy Thompson as featured guest. And man, that was so much fun again to have them, and listen to the story. And it was a tribute. And again, it was Finest Sound. It was a tribute to Alan Dawson. Okay. And I that's the first time I had met Alan's widow. What's her name? Flo. Yeah, Flo. Okay. And James presented an award to Flo on in honor of Alan. So it was billed as an Alan Dawson tribute celebration. And Flo was in the audience. Alan's son was there, and they were presented. So that was one of the last ones that I remember, that I recall. When he described to me his vision back in 1990 of putting together ICU, that's really what he articulated.
Yeah. Wow.
That's he was like, borrowing or taking influences from various aspects, not just the jazz history umbrella, but from R&B, from gospel, from the spirituals, just the whole spectrum of Black music folded into one presentation.
James Williams was a spirit. The spirit is forever. In other words, body and brain are just temporary, but spirit. So James Williams, I'm just as close with James Williams now as I was 40 years ago when he was still walking around here.